So we currently find ourselves in the middle of an international break, and after having a week off from the Championship, I've had a little bit of time to sort of collate my thoughts and come up with a prediction for how I think the Championship table will finish at the end of the season. So what we will be doing in today's video, we'll be looking at each club's remaining fixtures who are either going for promotion or relegation, and sort of deciding who has the hardest running between now and the end of the season. So what I want to know from you guys is, first of all, where do you think your club will finish, and how do you think the top 6 and bottom 3 will shape up come the end of the season? As you can see on screen now, that is how the Championship table is currently looking like, and there's not a lot to separate the teams at the moment. And so if you do go on to enjoy the video, make sure you do leave a like, it is always massively appreciated. We'll start away at the top of the Championship and work our way downwards. So without further ado, let's have a look at each team's remaining fixtures. So starting out at the top of the Championship, we've got Norwich, who currently find themselves 4 points clear of second and 5 points clear of third. And looking at that fixture running, I actually don't think it's too bad for Norwich. After an away trip against Middlesbrough, they've got quite winnable games coming up against QPR, Reading and Wigan. I think the games against Sheffield Wednesday at home and Aston Villa away could prove to be maybe a bit of a sticking point for Norwich. Playing Villa on the last day could be an interesting one if Norwich haven't already been promoted by that point, so they'll be looking to wrap up the league by that point, but already having a 5-point gap over Leeds in third. I think that will serve Norwich very well come the end of the season. Their last loss in the Championship came against Preston, and since then they've just been rolling out the results. They beat the likes of Bristol City, Hull and Rotherham lately, who are no mugs at the moment as they are battling for relegation. And looking at their fixtures, I think it would be fair to assume that Norwich probably are going to go on and get promoted this season. Into second we have Sheffield United, and I think they have a bit more of a difficult run-in than Norwich looking at their fixtures. Their next 2 games especially could be quite decisive for this United side. They got a home game against Bristol City and then an away trip against Preston North End. And even some of their other games towards the end of the season won't be as clear-cut as maybe a few people are thinking for Sheffield United. A home game against Forest will be tough, and an away trip against Hull also not an easy place to go to. I think what the general view is at the moment is that Norwich are probably going to go on to win the Championship, and that second spot is really between Leeds and Sheffield United. If I had to hold my hands up and say, I don't think that either of those two sides will have a flawless run between now and the end of the season. I can see both them losing maybe a couple of games, 1 game at least. With there being only 1 point between United and Leeds at the moment, the margin for error is going to be so small. The thing that I do really like about the Sheffield United side at the moment, though, is just how good they have been defensively. They've kept 7 clean sheets in a row now, and that consistency will serve them very well for the run-in. If we look at Leeds fixtures, I'd say that they have quite a similar run-in to United, actually. A couple of tricky games fluttered throughout there. An away trip to Preston, that could be quite interesting, really, with Preston having a say on who does get promoted, with both Leeds and United yet to come to Deepdale. A home game against Sheffield Wednesday won't be easy with them still in the promotion hunt. Brentford away at Griffin Park's never an easy place to go to, and Aston Villa at home as well. The good news for Leeds at the moment is that it is looking like Kamal Roof will be back from injury sooner than expected. I think that he's scored a lot of clutch goals for them throughout the season, and to get him back sooner rather than later will obviously be an added bonus for them. So far this season, Leeds have drawn the fewest games in the Championship. They've only drawn 7 so far, so Leeds don't really tend to do one-pointers and, play for something like that. They tend to be all or nothing. What I want to know from you guys is, who do you see finishing higher? Will it be Leeds or will it be Sheffield United? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll let you know my opinion at the end of the video. I think that most people would agree that West Brom are pretty comfortably going to be in the playoffs come the end of the season. I can't see them challenging the top 2, being 7 points away from Sheffield United at the moment, but equally they are 10 points inside the playoffs, so it's just about maintaining that for West Brom for the rest of the season. The odd thing about West Brom is they are still without a permanent manager, and I'm not sure if they are going to get one in before the end of the season. It's looking like they may make that decision of who they want to get in at the end of the season, judging on whether they are in the Premier League or still in the Championship, so it's a risky game plan that West Brom are playing at the moment. In terms of their fixtures, I'd say it's an okay run-in for them for the rest of the season. Some tricky games in there: Bristol City away, Preston at home, and Derby away on the last day of the season as well, although by that point I'd imagine that West Brom will already guarantee the playoff spot. Their form has picked up since sacking Darren Moore, but whether that will continue for the rest of the season and they'll be able to continue that going into the playoffs, I'm not so sure. West Brom at the moment, I'm a little bit unsure about. Middlesbrough are definitely a side looking over their shoulder at the moment. Only 1 point separates Villa and Preston from going into that 5th spot at the moment, and with Middlesbrough's form taking a bit of a nosedive lately, they've lost their last 3 matches. In their last 4 matches, they've only scored 2 goals. They had a battering against Aston Villa before the international break. Things aren't quite going to plan at Borough at the moment. Their next game is against Norwich at home. After that, they got Bristol City at home. However, after those 2 games, you have to say that Middlesbrough's run-in is actually looking quite favourable compared to some of the other teams who are below Middlesbrough and chasing the playoffs at the moment. I would suggest that Middlesbrough have one of the kindest run-ins between now and the end of the season. After those 2 games, they got Swansea away, Bolton away, Hull at home, Stoke at home. All of those games you'd be expecting Middlesbrough to take all 3 points from. Forest away could be a tricky one, and then the last 2 games of the season are against Reading and Rotherham. It's also worth noting that they do have a game in hand on Aston Villa and Preston North End, and with how Tony Pulis and this Borough side have been throughout the majority of the season, you'd expect after the international break they'll be a lot better defensively once again. They'll look to sharpen up the area, and I can see them just churning out the results from now until the end of the season. I don't think that this sort of downward trend of Middlesbrough's form will continue for much longer after the international break, although there is a real possibility that they will drop out of the playoffs come the end of the season. Probably one of the sides who are getting the most mainstream media attention at the moment in the race for the top 6 is Aston Villa, after really picking up their form lately after the return of Jack Grealish. Looking over Aston Villa's fixtures, the 2 that you are immediately drawn to are their last 2 games. They got an away trip against Leeds and a home game against Norwich. If Aston Villa haven't guaranteed the top 6 by then them 2 games are going to be incredibly intense. Looking over some of their other games, an away trip to Sheffield Wednesday will be a very interesting one. Steve Bruce, I'm sure, will be quite keen to put a spanner in the works with Aston Villa's promotion push. You'd probably be expecting this Villa side to beat the likes of Blackburn, Rotherham, Bolton and Millwall. And if I had to put a prediction on it now, do I think that Villa will finish in the top 6 come the end of the season? I'd probably be swaying towards yes, but I do think that this season will take quite a few more twists and turns before we do finally reach that outcome. Then just behind Aston Villa, we have got Preston on goal difference. Now, Preston find themselves unbeaten in 12 matches. We've won our last 3 games. In those 3 games, I don't necessarily think the performances have been that good. We beat Blackburn, Middlesbrough and Birmingham, picking up 9 points from those games. In terms of the games themselves, in terms of chances created, possession, expected goals and passing combinations, we haven't been at our best lately. However, picking up results whilst not being at your best has got to be a good omen for the future. Looking at our fixtures, it really is that 3-game stint against Sheffield United, Leeds and West Brom which really is going to be decisive. At the moment, playing with the momentum is what is really carrying us through games at the moment. If we completely fall apart in those 3 games and come out of those, with 3 losses, that will completely kill us for the rest of the season. The confidence I do take going into the games against Sheffield United and Leeds is the fact that they are both at home, and judging by our last game against the side in the top 3 at home, we beat Norwich 3-1. As well as those 3 games, our final 3 of the season I also think could be quite closely contested. Wigan away will be tough with them having a decent home record, and they'll still be scrapping out for survival. I think that Preston will go very close indeed this season, and considering I was predicting us to finish in the top 6 at the start of the season, if we do sneak in there on the final day, I'd be pretty happy with my prediction then. Hopefully we will have some more returning players after the international break as well, and to add to that, we've now got Callum Robinson, who has been back in training and made an appearance against Birmingham in our last game. Defensively, I would also suggest that we've been looking excellent lately, with Ben Davies and Jordan Storey being absolutely immense, as well as Declan Rudd, who's been absolutely tremendous. We will go very close to making the top 6 this season, but will we make it? It's going to be a tight one. I feel like Derby are a little bit of a forgotten side at the moment. When I've been looking at people's predictions for the top 6, no one's really been fancying Derby to make it. However, they do have a game in hand on the teams above them, and I would suggest that their fixture running is much easier than both Preston and Aston Villa's. The reason probably a lot of people aren't fancying them for the top 6 at the moment is their form before the international break wasn't anything to shout about. They've only won 1 out of their last 5 matches, and overall their performances haven't been very convincing. However, with Mason Mount now back in training for Derby and him returning after the international break, that will be a massive booster for this Derby side. The best football they played so far this season, Mason Mount's been central to that. If Wilson can get back firing as well, I think this Derby squad will have a very good chance of making it into the top 6. I saw a stat the other week saying that with Mason Mount, Derby have a 53% win ratio, and without Mason Mount, it's only a 23% win ratio. So there's no doubt that Mason Mount is going to be central to their promotion push from now until the end of the season, and with him back in the squad, I actually think Derby have got a very good chance. After that, we got Bristol City, who find themselves in a bit of an odd position at the moment because they do have 2 games in hand on the sides above them, and if they do win those 2 games in hand, then that could take them up to 5th in the championship. The only problem with Bristol City at the moment is they don't find themselves in a particularly good run of form. They're without a win in their last 5 matches now, and looking over at their fixtures for the rest of the season, they've got a very tough run in. I'd suggest that either Bristol City or Sheffield Wednesday have the hardest run in between now and the end of the season. They've still got Sheffield United away, Middlesbrough at home, West Brom at home, Aston Villa away, Sheffield Wednesday away, and Derby at home, all still to play. I can't see Bristol City being on the receiving end of a battering out of any of those games really. I think they'll all be very tight, and for Bristol City to make it into the top 6, I think it will be very fine margins in some of those games which will decide it for them. Only Middlesbrough and Sheffield United have conceded less goals than Bristol City so far. It's just been scoring goals which has been a little bit of an issue for Bristol City lately. In their last 4 games they've only scored 3 goals, and in the top 10 teams in the championship they are the 2nd lowest scorers. Only Middlesbrough have scored less goals than them so far. They could do it, but with those remaining fixtures fixtures, I've got a feeling that they may run out of steam. And speaking about a side who has a tough run in between now and the end of the season, the same could be said for Sheffield Wednesday. They've still got to play Aston Villa at home, Nottingham Forest at home, Leeds away, Norwich away, Bristol City at home, and Preston away. 6 game weeks in a row where Sheffield Wednesday are playing a side in the top half of the championship going for promotion. They find themselves unbeaten under Steve Bruce so far. They're unbeaten in 11 games, but in those 11 games, they haven't come up against a side who is currently going for the top 6 and come out of that with all 3 points. Their toughest 2 tests under Steve Bruce so far was a draw against Sheffield United and a draw against Derby County, both of which Sheffield Wednesday put in good performances for. However, if they were to draw all those tough games from now until the end of the season, then they wouldn't make it into the top 6. Quite similar to Preston, Sheffield Wednesday have sort of emerged from nowhere, and I do have a bit of a gut feeling that it could be either North End or Wednesday who do really throw a spanner in the works and just goes on to edge that 6th place. There's a good feeling going around the club at the moment, and I'm expecting that'll go into next season as well, and you know, who knows what could have happened if Bruce was in charge for this entire season for Wednesday. But with them probably having the toughest fixtures, I think they may just miss out. Then we got Nottingham Forest currently sat in 11th, and probably the last side who could feasibly go ahead and make it into the top 6. Hull probably do have a slight outside chance, but we'll focus on Forest for the time being. They've still got a couple of tricky fixtures to come. They've got games against Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United and Middlesbrough, but compared to some of the other sides above them, I don't actually think that that's that bad of a run in for Forest. The only problem with them at the moment is they have been quite inconsistent lately. They've only picked up 2 wins out of their last 5 matches. I think there's a bit of a split in the Forest fan base at the moment as to what they make of Martin O'Neill, and I'd probably suggest that the squad that Forest have at the moment isn't really suited to a manager like Martin O'Neill. With some of the footballers Forest have at their disposal, I don't necessarily think that they'll thrive under a Martin O'Neill structure, and although they have had quite a few decisions going against them this season, come the end of the season you make your own luck, and ultimately I don't think they'll have just enough what it takes to go ahead and sneak into the top 6. So there are the remaining fixtures for the sides who are currently going for promotion. I went ahead and did a table prediction for how I think the top 6 will shape up come the end of the year by putting in the results of what I think will happen in each game for the rest of the season, and this is what my table did come out as. And obviously it's impossible to predict from now until the end of the season, but from what I believe to be quite realistic results, this is what my table came back as. So I've got Norwich winning the league with 95 points. In 2nd and 3rd, I've got Sheffield United and Leeds on the same amount of points, and if all my predictions do come true, Sheffield United will go up on goal difference, and that just goes to show the small margins in the championship at the moment. And then the race for the top 6 looks absolutely ridiculous. I've got West Brom finishing in 4th, Villa in 5th and Middlesbrough in 6th, but below Middlesbrough I've got Derby on 71, the exact same as Borough, just missing out by goal difference, Preston on 17 missing out by 1, Bristol City missing out by 1, and then Sheffield Wednesday and Nottingham Forest also very slimly missing out. So it really does go to show that the top 6 this season is well and truly on, and any of those clubs could go on and make it. So I want to know your predictions for how you think the top 6 will shape up come the end of the season, but now we will move on into talking about the relegation battle. So this is how the bottom of the championship is currently looking like. I think it will be fair to assume that at the moment Ipswich and Bolton are pretty much all but relegated. Ipswich lately have picked up their form. I think the football they've been playing has been a lot more positive lately, but making up that difference of 13 points is pretty much all but impossible. And the same can be said for Bolton as well, who are looking pretty much all but relegated at the moment. And the whole situation going on around Bolton is quite sad at the moment, with obviously the threat of administration, everything going wrong with Ken Anderson. But for the time being, we will be focusing on the teams above them and that last relegation spot. And I have to say that every side battling for relegation at the moment really doesn't have an easy running. We'll start out by looking at Rotherham. In their next 3 games, they've got an away trip against Derby, a home game against Forest, and a home game against Aston Villa. You know, if Rotherham go ahead and lose all 3 of those games and the other sides around them start to pick up their form, Rotherham really could be left in it. As well as that, Rotherham's final 2 matches of the season come against West Brom and Middlesbrough. 2 very tricky encounters, those 2. However, when I have watched Rotherham lately, they're definitely anything but dead and buried. There's still a lot more fight in that squad to come. So Rotherham by no means are dead and buried, but it is a very tough run in for them. Reading have only lost 1 of their last 5 matches. However, they also have quite a tricky run in. They've still got Preston at home, Norwich at home, Bristol City away, West Brom at home, and Middlesbrough away, all still to play. From looking at both sides' fixtures, I can't see either side pulling away for the rest of the season. I think it really will go down to a last day scrap for all these sides. It would probably be fair to say that Millwall find themselves on the worst run of form out of the sides battling it out for that last relegation spot. They did beat Birmingham in their last championship encounter, however before that they had lost their last 4 matches. In 3 of the next 4 games they also face games against Leeds away, West Brom at home and Sheffield United away, as well as having Aston Villa and Bristol City to play towards the end of the season. Millwall are going to find it quite tough, I think. It's been well documented so far this season that Wigan have struggled on the road so far, so they'll need to take full advantage of their remaining home fixtures for the rest of the season. Looking at their home games, they got Brentford, Norwich, Preston and Millwall. That game on the last day of the season against Millwall could be absolutely pivotal in both teams' survival chances. I'm not really too sure how many points I can see them picking up away from home. They got Bristol City, Hull, Leeds and Birmingham. In all those games, I can't really see this Wigan side picking up more than sort of a handful of points. And so the home games, especially against Brentford, Preston and Millwall, are going to be absolutely pivotal for Wigan to stay up. And the side who has been dragged down into the relegation battle has been Birmingham after having 9 points deducted from the EFL. Birmingham fans, let me know down below, what do you make of this points deduction? In my opinion, I think Birmingham will take this quite gladly actually. They've got no implications going into next season like a transfer ban or starting next season on negative points, and given it only being a 9-point deduction and not a 12-point deduction, which would have been much worse, I don't think Birmingham are in that bad of a position. They have lost their last 4 matches, however they do sit 5 points above the relegation zone, and if I'm being honest, I can't see any side really catching Birmingham up, given the quality that Birmingham still have in that squad. They do still have some tough games to come, their next 3 especially being against West Brom, Leeds and Sheffield United. However, towards the end of the season, I think there's enough winnable games in there for Birmingham for them to have a comfortable end to the season. I went ahead and did my table predictor again, and as you can see, that was my bottom 3. I've got Ipswich, Bolton and Rotherham finishing in there. The margins for error though are so small. I've only got Rotherham going down by a couple of points, with Reading, Millwall and Wigan just above the relegation zone. But guys, there you have it. That will now wrap it up for this video. So that are my predictions for what I think will happen for the rest of this season. And let me know down below what you make of your team's chances for either promotion or survival this season. If you did go on to enjoy the video, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. As well as that, make sure you subscribe for a bit of regular championship content. After this international break, we will be going full force back into championship content. So you got that to look forward to. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, guys. And I'll see you all in the next one.